This is exactly what Vikings fans needed to hear as KOC drops a massive Justin Jefferson update, and the timing could not be more perfect in light of some other injury updates and their implications as Minnesota gears up for their final preseason game before the start of the regular season. We're going to be breaking down all of that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first, if you're enjoying this Vikings content, you want to help us reach our goal of 2,000 subscribers before the start of the regular season. You guys did a great job on that last video helping us get closer to that goal, so let's just keep on climbing as this Vikings team is ready to roll. And with that, let's hop right into it, which is Jettas is ready for takeoff. So Kevin O'Connell spoke to the media today, and of course the first thing that was brought up was Justin Jefferson, as he said that he will begin to take part in practice. It'll be kind of a ramp up. You'll see him take parts in bits and pieces of it here, but he will officially be back to work and be ramping up from there. So right off the bat, this is exactly what Vikings fans needed to hear, because we need Jefferson for the start of the season, especially with Jordan Addison being suspended for the first 3 games, with Jalen Nailor's recent injury, which we're going to touch on later on in this video. And this could not have come at a more perfect time as they get ready for their final preseason game, which Jefferson obviously will not be playing in, but they will have him hopefully fully ready to go at 110% for the start of the regular season, especially when hamstrings are a real nagging issue for a lot of players. It can flare up and go away at a moment's notice. We saw Aaron Jones battle through a hamstring basically all of last season. Obviously, Justin Jefferson on that other hamstring that unfortunately made him miss time a couple seasons ago. So this is a thing where hamstrings are not something to be taken lightly, whether it's a slight pull or a tear or whatever it is something you do not want to mess around with or risk anything happening further. So Minnesota, they're going to play it safe. They're going to ramp him up a little bit here and there, but it seems like this Jet is going to be ready for takeoff come week 1, and I cannot wait to see him be suiting up against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football with JJ McCarthy throwing him passes. And it didn't stop there, as KOC was talking more about his current status. He said he's kind of through this period of time where we let him get his football legs back underneath him. He's done such a good job with building his strength and doing the work with the medical team and the strength team that I think he probably feels like he's pretty darn close and ready to go. Obviously, with Minnesota, we've heard nothing but the highest praise from TJ Hawkinson, from JJ McCarthy, from other players even that aren't even in the building anymore, how great this Minnesota Vikings medical staff is, the strength team, the conditioning team, everything in between. Nothing but the highest praise is part of why Minnesota just continues to get high grades amongst the player and organization voting as one of the best cultures and organizations in the entire league, and probably the best. If you're asking anybody, especially Vikings fans, they would probably tell you that, but anyone who has played for the Minnesota Vikings or is currently playing for them, they would say that they have the best medical staff in the league. And it goes to show with what they did with TJ Hawkinson, getting him back and ready after that disturbing injury that he had, Justin Jefferson getting him back and ready to go in that season where we didn't know if he was going to play again or if they were going to shut him down with the way that the playoffs race were going that year. Then of course with Aaron Jones making sure that he didn't go on the injured reserve list or missed any games. There's a lot of things here that this Minnesota Vikings strength, conditioning, and health team are not getting enough credit for, and we got to give them the most amount of praise right here for them being able to get Justin Jefferson ready to go and for what they've been able to do in the past. And as well as talking about Jefferson's prep, KOC has said that we got this time leading into 3 weeks from today, so we've got a little bit of time now to kind of work him back in and continue to build his reps up here as we go. And it coincides with the schedule, with how we handle this week being a pretty heavy week for that first group of guys that we can slowly integrate him back in. You'll see him do some work with the group. Obviously, I mean, this is just music to Vikings fans' ears. This is what we wanted to hear. We were hoping that we were going to get a Jefferson update sooner rather than later as we got to this final preseason game. Thankfully, this came earlier in the week rather than later. I know we're not going to see him play for sure. We're just going to see him be suited up on the sidelines in just his track clothes, but just ready to be eager to hop on that field for week 1. And there's going to be a lot to watch for week 3 of the preseason. But the other thing that's going to be very interesting to watch is what implications Justin Jefferson returning and as well as the other injuries that happen within this wide receiver core as far as week 1 goes. And that is going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is injury implications. So the Justin Jefferson news occurs at a time when receiver Jalen Nailor is dealing with a hand injury. O'Connell classified Nailor's status as week to week at this point, but will be able to maintain his conditioning and game shape while mending his hand. So it's good that he's going to be able to keep himself moving because the hand isn't in the legs or it's not in the knees. So it's all good there. It's just a matter of when that hand is going to be ready to go. But week to week is not something you want to hear when you look at this depth chart Obviously, Justin Jefferson listed as questionable. He'll be ready to go for week 1, I'm sure. But then Jalen Nailor, will he be ready in 3 weeks to go with that hand injury? We saw Tyreek Hill kind of battle through a wrist and hand injury all of last season. Who's to say how much of it was true or just trying to avoid playing for the Dolphins? But that's all a different matter, where we've seen how hand injuries and wrist injuries can be very nagging for players, the same way with hamstrings, where it seems like something that an athlete just tries to power through. They think it's nothing, and then something goes completely wrong in a game and it derails everything. And especially in a contract year for Jalen Nailor, obviously him and the organization are going to want to have to play it safe, especially when you look at the depth in this wide receiver position. Jordan Addison without the first 3 games, so you got to count him out for the first 3 games of the season there. Where Jalen Nailor, if he's not ready to go, then you would have Justin Jefferson with Lucky Jackson, Ty Felton, maybe Xavier Scott, because he's been playing pretty decently out of the wide receiver, where he was just throwing out on those screen passes, on those flats, where maybe you rotate him in as a wide receiver. Who knows? Miles Price, KOC talked about how he has a lot of potential to make guys miss in special teams. Maybe he's not quite ready to make that jump to wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, sorry. But with Ty Felton, Lucky Jackson, I think that brings a little bit of instability there for those first 3 games, where Justin Jefferson will get double teamed a lot by those first 3 opponents with Chicago and Atlanta as well. There's going to be a lot for Minnesota to have to handle on defense with those secondaries, especially if they don't have Jalen Nailor and Jordan Addison for the first game at least. For sure, Jordan Addison, of course. But if Jalen Nailor isn't ready to go, that's going to be a big problem for Minnesota, and Justin Jefferson is going to get smothered, and Minnesota is going to have to really rely on that run game and passing off to TJ Hawkinson and Josh Oliver, because maybe they develop that trust and Lucky Jackson gets going. We also got Ty Felton, who made a really nice catch off that tip ball to himself basically in the last game. So it's not like we're completely screwed if Jalen Nailor isn't ready to go week 1. However, it is something to monitor, where it could be something that becomes a storyline throughout the year, just like Jefferson's hamstring. Just because he's ready to go week 1 doesn't entirely mean that issue is completely gone, like it can flare up right out of nowhere week 5 or something like that. Could be the same case for Jalen Nailor. So in a contract year for Jalen Nailor, and looking at this wide receiver core of what there is in there, I beg and plead for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to go out and sign Tyler Boyd and Gabe Davis at this point, because with the injuries that Minnesota's had racking up, we just had Rondale Moore go down for the year. We just had Justin Jefferson get injured. Jalen Nailor is hurt. And now we have Jordan Addison suspended. So with all these things already happening, and the season hasn't even started yet, and we're still in the preseason, go out and get safety valves. Go out and get guys that are proven. Go out and get guys that are going to produce. And go out and get guys that can be reliable for the early start of the year. I know a lot of people are saying, well, you're just worrying about the first 3 games. You kind of have to worry about later on in the season when it matters most. But injuries can happen throughout the entire course of the season. We saw with Christian Darrisaw. We saw Brian O'Neill. We saw with so many different injuries last year that Minnesota really can't afford to have that happen. So yes, while a lot of teams just try and bank on having the best guys they have at number 1 and number 2, sometimes you need to dip into those number 3 and 4 guys, because we saw with the Lions last year when they had as many injuries that they had, and Minnesota is looking like they're getting hit with that injury bug this season already. You don't want to be in a situation where you have your mailman playing left tackle and you have your sister playing wide receiver. You don't want to have a situation like that where you have nobodies in there. Not saying these guys aren't talented, but when you're going up against a team like the Eagles, like the Rams, like the Chiefs, like the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, all these teams that are going to be contenders and have that depth at every single position, you're going to be up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. So here's to hoping that Minnesota goes out and makes a move to get at least one more wide receiver. And if it is, I pray to God it's Tyler Boyd. Please, that would be amazing. But in any case, that is going to be something for Minnesota to have to look for. And hopefully we get a update on those wide receivers very soon. And hopefully Jalen Nailor is able to make a quick turnaround and that week to week becomes day to day before week 1. But let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments below. And one more injury news that we're going to touch on here as well is that O'Connell said that Vikings avoided anything long-term with Joshua Metellus, who landed awkwardly at the end of Thursday's joint practice with the Patriots. O'Connell said Metellus will work back in during Monday's session. Working through some soreness, he's going to be in a good spot. So thankfully, we avoided a disaster there where, again, like I just said, injury bug is hitting Minnesota, and it's sweeping through like crazy right now for the preseason. And this is a problem that cannot persist even further. I know we saw where Matthew Judon just went and visited with some teams as well. Maybe Minnesota brings him in for a visit. Who knows? I know he'll be very expensive to bring in for 1 year, but with all the injuries that Minnesota seems to be already having, go out and get the best depth that you can, even if these are guys that you might be that what a lot of people would be considered overpaying for. If those starters get hurt and those guys that you were seemingly overpaying for have to step in and perform in big games and big moments, you're not looking like an idiot at that point. So that's something where Minnesota hopefully is looking in their bag of tricks of how they can move the cap around to bring in a few more acquisitions either before the season starts or by the trade deadline. Because this team right now, if we get hit with a few more injuries, it is not looking good in Minnesota if that persists. But let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments about it. Are you guys worried about the injuries already racking up at this point? Or do you guys think that once the season starts, it'll be smooth sailing? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. And thank you guys again for watching as well, bumping us up through the views that you guys got in the last video. It was really great seeing that uptick. Here's to hoping that we get more of videos like that and you guys just continue to support, as well as a Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl at the end of this season. And it would be amazing if this is where it all starts, where this ride with Vikings Digest and Minnesota Vikings ends in a Super Bowl for this season in season 2. Cannot wait for this regular season to get going. I can just feel it around the corner. Fantasy drafts are coming up. Everyone is getting hyped up for the season, and it is nearly here. But for now, that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.